Okay, stand by. We'll just call the meeting to order. All right, we will call the meeting to order. It's a meeting of December the 21st, a meeting at 4 o'clock, the last meeting of the calendar year. Due to Howard Fromer, the engineer from Jacobson Associates, being on the line, we will put his item first, which is a general discussion about the Grassy Hill Road Bridge project. Just as a little background, the town has finished, Jacobson helped us with the bridge at Mile Creek. That project is completed, thankfully, and so there was a companion project, which is the Grassy Hill Road. I think it's called a culvert, but it's really a bridge over a very small water course. This bridge would be eligible for a 50% state grant, and the reason we want to talk about it today is that the original. There are two things. The engineering work required of the Corps of Engineers. We ask people on the phone. People on the phone, please mute yourselves. The Corps of Engineers must issue a permit, and that permit for this particular project is forecast to take pretty much all the time that the construction this summer would be available. So it would be really until 2022 that this work could be done. When we learned about that, we said, well, why don't we see if the DOT will extend the timing on it, and it seemed that they would be agreeable to that. In conjunction with that submission, we also noted that between the preliminary cost estimate and a more refined, I don't know if it would be considered the final cost estimate, there was a very large increase in the construction budget, which means that not only would the job cost a great deal more, the town share would be a great deal more. So that prompted me to speak with Mr. Fromer and to analyze where we are, whether this is an imperative that we replace the bridge or something it would be sensible to do, particularly with 50% funding, and given the new items, whether we would want to continue with this. So at this point, I think the board would be well served to hear from Howard on the project, and we just ask that the public not comment during Howard's presentation. So Howard, if you'd pick it up, we'd greatly appreciate that.
Sure, Tim. So my understanding is one of the main questions from the town is the difference in cost between the estimate when the project was conceptual to at this stage where we're basically done with final design. Originally, the cost for the construction, per our estimate, was about $490,000, and now we're at about $960,000. And I know that you're, again...
We ask that the public not make any comments, please.
You're listening to tapes.
And so the explanation for that, there's several items here. I guess right off the bat, there's no question that we should have included what the DOT allows in a very conceptual estimate, what they call a minor item allowance, in the conceptual stage before there's actually any design or any drawings, and the costs are really quantities that are conceptualized based off, visitation to the site and desktop references. The DOT allows this like 20 or 30% item in the cost estimate to pick up, unforeseen or just to really cover the fact that it's a very, very, very preliminary stage. So there's no question we should have had that in that $490,000, and that was not in there. Had it been in there, the estimate would have been at that stage at about $746,000. Another reason we looked at here is that we noticed that in the conceptual estimate there really was no road work. We did not plan on redoing the intersection of Route 1, which really came out of the design process where we took a hard look at the ability for vehicles, different types of vehicles, to successfully make the turn into Grassy Hill Road without occupying the opposite lane, which really is what happens now for just about every vehicle except motor vehicles from heading up Route 1 in the northerly direction. And anyway, so after we looked at that, we realized that the bridge deck width, for lack of a better word, had to be widened considerably, and in so doing sort of forced us into the intersection, improving the intersection, which currently is like a Y intersection. We want to make that a T. So we have about double the amount of road work between the conceptual to the final design. There were other, obviously, quantity increases as a result of the road work increase, and then there were some unit price increases. We use unit prices published by the DOT, and several of them went up considerably. For instance, one in particular, the cofferdam price per linear foot went up from like $275 to $535 a foot between conceptual and final design, and that added about $80,000 to the project just from that item alone. So, what can be done to reduce costs? There was some discussion we had out there with Tim and Ed Adante. One of the things that could be done, we currently are showing simulated stone masonry on all the visible vertical faces of the concrete parapets and wing walls. But on the downstream side, I guess it seems that nobody really could see that face as it really kind of faces the woods. So the thought was we could eliminate the simulated stone masonry from the downstream face, and that would save about $9,000. We could also even take a look at eliminating the simulated masonry from any other face. We have some clients that typically will remove it from the traffic faces of the parapets, but that's really an aesthetic call that the town would have to make. Under the previous administration in town, our marching orders were to basically provide a structure that at least generally looks like what's out there now in terms of, it's got sort of a stone face look with sort of a cap to the walls. So that's sort of the design that we've developed. Other things that we could reduce, again, it's not a big chunk of money, but at the outset of this project, a timber approach guide rail was selected by the town. We could eliminate that because it's fairly expensive and go back to just a simple hot dip galvanized metal beam rail, which would save about $12,000. Or if that was deemed to not be very aesthetic, some clients will powder coat the rail. You could powder coat it just about any color you want. Typically black is used because it kind of disappears from view, and that would save about $3,000 because it's a little bit more expensive than the plain hot dip galvanized if you decide you want to powder coat. So those aren't big savings items. There's not a lot of fluff in a project like this as far as things to save. I know Tim wanted to talk about one option maybe is just replace the culvert itself and not any road work. So that's something that could be done but would not address the functional obsolescence of the bridge, the fact that most vehicles turning into that bridge have to occupy the opposite lane when they make the turn. So just replacing the culvert itself wouldn't address that. And that's a feature that would have to be addressed if you're going to use state local bridge money. The state will not let you use their money if you don't address the different problems with the bridge. From a structural standpoint, there was some semi-major deficiencies that were repaired on sort of a temporary / permanent basis. The approach, the parapets, however, is something that there was cracks in them that were patched, but the real issue is that because the bridge deck is so narrow, the parapets get hit by vehicles, and the parapets are not attached structurally or mechanically. They're just mortared stone walls, so they get hit and they sort of shift away from the road. I suppose at some point it could shift and sort of fall off the bridge, and that's one of the other major issues that we were tackling by replacing the bridge. So we were going to fix the structural adequacy of that and also address the functional obsolescence. Hydraulically, the town reports that they really have not experienced many flooding events. I think DPW told us during the Superstorm Sandy, the road was overtopped. I don't know what recurrence interval storm that was. The use of the DOT funds requires a 100-year design storm. Our model shows the water going over the road in the existing case. So if you were to just replace the bridge itself and not raise the road in conjunction with doing that, then the span of the box culverts could have to change a little bit. It might have to get a little bit wider. And so what we've got is we sort of both widen the box culvert barrels and raise the road just a little bit to offset that increased water surface, and make those two elements work together to satisfy the DOT's hydraulic design criteria. So Tim, that's a lot of information all at once, and I'm sure it's best probably to maybe try and answer some questions from the board.
Right. Okay. So just in the macro sense, this bridge is, I think you rated it, you said the state has rated it not necessarily failing, but it's not particularly great either, so it's sort of in the middle, or how would you characterize it?
We did an inspection for the town, which is required to be done in order to apply for these funds. If there isn't one in the file that the DOT has done, they hadn't done one. So we found the bridge itself to be, like I said, structurally deficient, functionally obsolete. Again, one of the main issues is the parapets not being mechanically fastened, so there really isn't any resistance they provide to being hit, at least according to today's standards. So that's the issue. I mean, at some point, DOTs don't make towns do things per se, but they certainly will stuff their file with, recommendations and suggestions, and what they find, and then it's up to the towns to decide what they want to do.
But is there a rating scale on the bridge overall, like a 1 to 10 type of rating or something?
Yes, 0 to 9, 0 being bridge closed, 9 being a brand new bridge. This one was given a rating of 4 overall, which is structurally deficient, making it eligible for funding.
Structure deficient.
Right.
Okay. Now, would that mean that at some point the state would want action, or you could just say, well, thank you very much, and we'll think about it for a while? I mean, is there any timeline on a 4 out of a 9? It's less than 50%, so I guess if they
go ahead.
They might. Do they come back later on and they could lower the rating, and that would require replacement at that time? Do you believe?
The bridge is structurally deficient, and our recommendation that we had, I guess, the most cost-effective solution in the long run is to replace the bridge. If you didn't at this stage, the design's done, that could be shelved. And then, would the state come back and, order the town? They don't really order the towns to do these sorts of things. They might do a report themselves and come back to you and say, hey, we found it to be structurally deficient. We recommend that you hire an engineer to, assess the bridge and decide what to do. So we've sort of already done that part, assessed the bridge and decided what to do. But again, at this stage, if the town wanted to hold off a bit, that is always the town's prerogative. Mm-hmm. But I don't think the state would make the town do anything on that. My experience with this program is they can't really do that. They definitely will, however, write letters and say that they recommend that, you get an engineer to take a look at it, decide what to do.
And with the work that you've already performed, which is getting close to the total engineering work, how long would that be relevant before it would be obsolete itself?
Well, it's always hard to say. Standards are constantly changing. They're sort of out of our control. DOT standards or federal standards or DEP standards. I would find it hard to imagine that somebody would have to sort of start all over again. But I definitely think that if it was shelved for a while, that there may be something to address. Maybe hydraulically. I don't know. I haven't seen any major hydraulic changes in the previous years, although I guess that's not entirely true. With the NOAA 14 and climate change, there have been some changes to address the design flows that engineers use for these sorts of things. So maybe that's something that might be impacted down the road. I don't know. Hard to say. Yeah,
because you're pretty percentage-wise, you're pretty far along completing the work at this point, right?
Yeah, we have a set of drawings and specifications that I would say are at about 95%. And we're in the process of pulling together applications to the Army Corps and the DEP to get permits. And those, once we send those in, we've got several of them out there now for some other projects, and they're taking 9 or 10 months so far. Some of them we haven't even heard back yet. I think things are taking just a little bit longer due to the state of the pandemic, I suppose. Maybe it's a little less efficient for them to process things. I don't know, but I think, and that ties into your comment early on, why this wouldn't make a 2021 construction. It would have to be 2022. But the decision to move forward with 2022 construction would start with filing of permit applications to the Corps and DEEP, and I would think those ought to be probably filed by March or April to hopefully get them back in time to go out to bid next winter.
How long is the project likely to take?
Chris asked how long this project would take. What you mean, once all approvals are secured?
Yeah, once approved, the actual construction, how long do you think it'll take? Any idea?
Typically 4 months, I would say 4 to 5 months. And another key component to this whole project is the aerial utility lines. We've got 4 different companies out there owning lines that need to be adjusted. They need to be temporarily moved out of the way for the required cofferdam, and then they need to be brought back or put in a different permanent position. So, while the actual construction to take care of the culvert itself is probably 4 months, there would definitely be sort of another project earlier on that the utility companies would handle, and that is to get their utilities temporarily out of the way.
Now, when we were there, you were talking about the utilities coming out of Grassy Hill Road would have to be deviated somehow, and I guess if they were to deviate toward the lake, on the lake side of the bridge, it would involve private property. There might be another plan to have them come across before the bridge and come toward the Boughton Road Fire Station to avoid going on the private property quite so much. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We met with them earlier this year. The 3 of the utility companies were present. Frontier didn't show to the meeting, and the decision at that time was that a temporary line could be brought across the brook on the upstream side of the culvert, and that would be well out of the way of any crane setting the cofferdam, and also would only impact one private property owner and would have very, very limited tree trimming or tree removal, I suppose. And then we got asked by, I think it was Frontier and Eversource, to attend another meeting this past fall. And at that meeting, this time Frontier was present, and they seemed to be the main driver in wanting to, instead of running a temporary line upstream, run it downstream of the culvert. But the issue there, like you say, Tim, is we've got a couple of private property owners, but more importantly, we've got a number of trees that would have to be removed. So I've been talking with you, and we've got a draft letter for you guys to put on letterhead to send out to utility companies to try and further coordinate and try and resolve exactly what would be done.
Now, would there be any possibility that the utility work could happen regardless of the timing of the bridge work, or would the utilities require that that their work be followed very closely by the actual bridge work?
I think they're really two independent things. We certainly would like them to not coincide or in any other way interrupt one or the other. With a 2022 construction for the culvert, that gives, theoretically, plenty of time in 2021, theoretically, to get the utilities relocated and out of the way. So they could be two standalone issues. So they could be relocated out of the way, and then it would make way for the bridge.
But I think when we were there, you were saying that the wires have to be at least 15 feet away from where the machine boom would be, and that if we were to do the utility movement, the finished product, the lines might still be too close to the bridge itself, and then it would be like Mile Creek. We'd have to do something to pull them out of the way temporarily. The 15-foot dimension, so to set the sheet pile cofferdam, there's a crane and there's a vertical pick line coming off the crane boom, and so there's restrictions on how close live electric lines can be to that. On the top of these utility poles, there's a spreader bar. If you look up, you see like a T, looks like the letter T, because there's a horizontal member carrying the aerial lines, and that T is fairly wide, 10-ish feet, shall we say, and has three electrical wires on it, and so there's 5 feet there from the center of the pole to the edge of the T, and then I believe there's supposed to be at least 10 feet from a live electrical line to the crane, so that's the 15-foot dimension from the closest electrical line to the crane boom, and that's what's driving the temporary lines to be so far either downstream or upstream from the culvert. That's what's driving that distance. But if we were to try to do the utility work and have it finished, then would we still have to move the lines a little bit out of the way after they've been in the permanent location?
I'm sorry, Tim, I'm not quite following you there.
All right, if we were so fortunate as to have the utility companies move the lines the way we would like them, with no construction occurring, when they're finished and the lines are in their final position, would we then have to look forward to the prospect of moving the lines to meet that 15-foot separation?
Well, again, I'm not sure I'm entirely following you, but if the only reason I see to move utility lines temporarily is for the bridge construction. If you're not going to do the bridge construction, and let's say you don't want to address the intersection, then there's no reason to touch the lines. If you do want to do one or the other or both, and you need to move the lines out of the way, then once they're out of the way, that makes way for the construction work, and then it's up to utility companies to then put those back however they want to put them back. When they put them back, they might be over the new bridge, and that is what it is. That's the way it would be. The temporary location would only be just that, temporary. It wouldn't be permanent. So you couldn't anticipate moving the lines during this next 12 months to their permanent location. It would only be temporary. Oh yeah, no, you can't. That's the whole thing. You can't put them in the permanent location is somewhat similar to the existing location, and both locations conflict with trying to build the bridge. So the existing lines need to be moved out of the way to make way for the bridge, and then once the bridge work is done, the lines can get put back however the utility companies want to put them back, similar to the way it is today, or maybe a little bit different. But they need to be moved out of the way for the bridge work.
Other questions from select people?
So how long is our grant money or whatever?
Well, that would also need to be extended.
Okay.
And when we spoke to the DOT representative, he seemed to be agreeable on both. That the larger dollar amount, the postponing the project. So I was surprised, because you'd think with the state finances that if this thing went up, not quite double, but you'd think that they'd say, well, wait a minute, that's, we can't afford that. So we didn't get a letter to that effect, but we were advised, it seemed like there was a pretty good reception to the time delay and the monetary increase.
Okay. So we can budget it.
Yeah, that's correct, Tim. We have an email from the state in that regard, and they commented that they wouldn't be issuing a letter yet because they had other priorities, I guess, they had to address before they would get around to this sort of thing. But we have the email to make us feel comfortable in saying that they generally agreed to a time extension into the cost increase.
Howard, when was the conceptual design done?
Preliminary design.
Here. Yep. So that was done when we filed the application to the DOT for funding, and that was done in August of 2018.
Okay. I know for a while the state was not giving grants for bridge reconstruction, and then when these monies became available, there was a sense of urgency to take advantage of it. Is there any way? Yeah. Is there any concern that they may have to take away the funding?
Well, in the state local bridge program, you're right. There's not money available every year. They started with the program in 1984, and for many, many, many years, every year there was monies. I can't remember what year was the first year that sort of caught us off guard, where suddenly they weren't funded. And of late, it seems like they're not funded more than they are funded. You're right. These past several months, I think they received 12 or 15 million. I forget the exact number. And then they put out basically an invitation to municipalities to submit applications due by November 30. The Grassy Hill Road project, was submitted much earlier, so we're already in the pot with all the other bridges that may have gotten submitted. Is there a concern that they might not get funded again? I mean, that's certainly a possibility. Like I say, it seems like more often than not, this particular program doesn't receive funding. So you sort of have to just cross your fingers from year to year and just see if the bond commission funds them.
Okay. If this work to date was going to be postponed, I guess additional work was going to be postponed, how much would the town be required to pay your firm for at this point?
A reimbursement.
Yeah, at this point we have a contract with the town. I don't know the exact number, but we're basically almost done through final design. Under this program, they provide a grant for 50% of that amount. But without that grant amount, then the town would be responsible for the 100% of it. I can get back to you after the meeting with the exact figure, if you like.
I think the figure on your invoices is $82,100. And
I'll go with that number, Tim. I don't have it in front of me here.
Yeah. And I think 68.5 approximately has been billed. So if we were to not proceed with it, then I guess we would pay, there'd be no reimbursement for any of the engineering to date. Is that how it would work?
Correct. And another important point to think about too is, you're waiting for your commitment to fund letter, from the town, from the state. And so you don't want to, I don't know why you would, but you wouldn't want to go to construction without getting your commitment to fund letter, because once you do that, then the state, if you've gone to construction, they won't reimburse anything. They won't reimburse any engineering or any construction. And we have several municipalities sort of in the same shoes. They're waiting for commitments before they move forward, and sort of stuck in between things here a little bit.
Well, with the delay due to the Corps of Engineers, I guess hopefully, that even though they're slow, that would provide a whole nother year if the decision was to continue.
Correct. I mean, my feeling with this program is they're in the business to get bridges replaced or repaired. They're not looking to, fight with people over them. They want to get these things, repaired and replaced. And they understand the process very well, and they understand that there's time it takes to get Corps and DEP permits. So that's part of why I think the email that we got, Tim, from the DOT wasn't alarmed with the request for an extension of time.
We could still maintain our place in line, I guess, and the Corps of Engineers.
Yeah. Right. You would still maintain your place in line. At this point, actually, as I look here, at this point, you do have a commitment. Okay, so at this point, really, it's just a matter of getting an extension before the supplemental application is due. The supplemental application, basically, the state wants the project to be done. They want the final drawings, specs, estimates, easements, and permits. And usually what they do is they give you I think it's 9 months to get that done once your commitment letter is issued. And that's the extension component that we're asking for here, because you get a commitment letter and then they give you nine months to get the supplemental application in. And so that's the component basically that we're asking an extension for.
Well, right. So when you say commitment letter, that would be for the new amount and for the new timing?
I'm looking here in the file, Tim, and I see that you guys actually do have a commitment letter. So although there wasn't any funds behind it until recently, you have a commitment letter. The issue is that one of the issues here is that we need to file for permits, and the permits are going to take a while to get. So we wouldn't be able to file the supplemental application, which has the final drawings, final specs, and estimates and everything, until after we got the permits, which at this point would be, because of the time it takes to get a Corps and a DEP permit, at this time we wouldn't be able to get those permits until after the supplemental application is due. And so that's the extension that we've requested from the state to enable us to give us time to get those permits, and so we can build the project in 22.
Okay. Do you think that the engineering budget has remaining funds to accommodate the supplemental information?
Oh yes, that part of our contract with you guys is to provide the paperwork to the DOT, as far as what they need under the state local bridge program.
Because it looks to me like it's around 15,000 left, and I just wonder if that's sufficient for all that.
Yes. The supplemental application, again, at this point, it includes final drawings and specs. So what I'm saying is our drawings and specs are about 95%. They also want to have all your easements which we're going to have to get temporary easements. Let's see, they want the permits, which, our contract with you guys has a separate task for permits. So, we're working under that task and would bill for permits. So that's not part of sort of the design, the final design task. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is that the $15,000 is definitely adequate to take care of the paperwork that's needed for this program to get you to the supplemental application. And then what they'll then do is they'll issue an agreement form, and then we'll help the town with that agreement form to the extent we can, but then you'll need to get your town attorney involved as well.
Now, the temporary easements, that would be over private property?
Correct.
And so if you had difficulty obtaining an easement for some reason, I guess you'd have to sort through that, either figure a way around it or have to take more aggressive steps to get the easement for the temporary purpose.
Yeah, and that's why we're right in the thick of that battle, as you understand, with the utility companies wanting to put temporary lines downstream of the culvert where, they're off onto two private properties in the woods, if you guys know that site, and there's a lot of trees to be removed, versus upstream where there's barely any trees to be trimmed or removed. And so we either need two temporary easements, down gradient, or one temporary easement, up gradient. We have not gotten beyond the issue of trying to resolve which side of the road for the utility companies to be on. Once we've done that, then we can reach out to you, Tim, and work with your office as far as approaching these property owners. Most times, in our experience, property owners are, willing to work with municipalities one way or the other. Nobody's looking to, in our experience anyway, to, just to put their foot down and carry this to some next level. Everybody seems to always want to try and work together because really to repair the bridge it's a benefit for the property owners as well.
Well, you mentioned tree cutting. If it were just simply to be able to have a machine go onto the property for a bit or put some riprap in or something, but if you're doing what an owner might consider drastic tree work, they might be very objectionable. Which might
exactly.
be, maybe you could go back to Frontier and say, we're getting a lot of pushback from the property owner, we really have to go this other direction, and hopefully they would be reasonable about that.
Right. So I know you haven't seen it yet, but we sent you a draft letter to the utility companies, all four of them, to be placed on town letterhead. When you get a chance, you can take a look at that. But that basically follows up, it's a follow-up to the last utility coordination meeting where we're basically saying what you're talking about, that the utility company's idea of going down gradient just is not going to be something that the town's going to be able to obtain easements for, just based on the drastic tree cutting, and then also the issue of that pole that they wanted to put within the limits of existing pavement was just unacceptable. Yeah. And so anyway, the gist of that letter is to them that we want to come to some final decision and resolution and move forward with this. So we're looking for one more meeting with the players.
Howard, I had one other question. You had mentioned that because of the narrowness of the geography there, that the bridge gets hit. And I was aware of one instance. I think we all were. So it sounds like this has happened more than once?
Yeah, actually, when we were out there with Tim and Ed just recently, I noticed that the parapet, since there were some repairs done by Magna Construction several months ago now, but the parapet clearly has been hit again. So it's in particular, it seems to be the one on the upstream side. As vehicles heading south on Route 1 take the right turn into Grassy, they're occupying the opposite lane at the same time trying to make that turn, and they seem to come in contact with that parapet.
And then they have to work around that foam pole too. Okay.
You mean the pole that's in the island?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a constraint.
Yeah, the Y intersection is not a sinuous radius. It's really sort of like a chord, with a very small radius right at the bridge. So even while we were standing out there, I think a box truck came through, and he quite obviously occupied the entire deck width to get over the bridge. And most people, I suppose, are pretty understanding, and they have been, I suppose. And somebody heading south on Grassy Hill will wait, obviously, until some big truck makes the maneuver.
Yeah.
It's obviously not ideal, but that's for the town to decide. If they want to improve it.
Howard, does the town have a liability then if there's an accident, since we're aware of this being a concern, and if we don't move forward?
Well, I'm not an attorney, but we've all come down this road a little bit and created a design that recognizes that the bridge is functionally obsolete, and created a design that widens the road, to address that situation. From there, I think that's a question for the town attorney. What does that mean to have that in the file if somebody gets hurt? I don't know.
Thank you.
Well, it's been there for, I don't know how many decades, but, now is now and ends then. All right. Well, we have any more questions?
Thank you, Howard.
We thank you very much for your insight, and we did speak with the Board of Finance a week ago and brought them up to date about where we are and some of the issues, and so but the Selectmen will have to mull this over and make a recommendation to the Board of Finance. It's pretty much in our lap right at the moment.
Yeah, we'll sit tight, obviously. We won't do any work on it. I would suggest that the town move forward with the utility relocation. My feeling is it takes so long to get utilities relocated and easements signed and such that at some point you're probably going to want to replace that bridge, and if you can get the utilities relocated to the upstream side far enough away, at least someday when you're ready to do your work, that'll be ready to go.
Well, that's what I was...
But that might not... Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe I misunderstood you, Tim, but I don't know if that would be particularly practical, because if it's a temporary easement, you need to put a time restriction on it for somebody. They need to know how long the area lines are going to be over their property, and so it makes it a little bit cumbersome to... I'm not quite sure how you convince someone to let you put their lines there if you don't know when you're going to do the bridge work.
Well, they might say, until you really are committed to doing the work on the bridge, we're not going to do the moving at our cost. They might say that's going to be expensive, and so who knows what the dynamic of that would be.
They might, but at the very least, it would be nice to at least work through with the utility companies and get a plan and understanding of what will be done, so both the utility companies and the town agree.
Yeah.
Let's say, for instance, that they move it to the upstream side, so when the day comes that you're ready to move forward, you can pick up the phone and ask them to move it, and you've got a plan in place for them to move it. I think getting to the point where everybody's in agreement, I think, is the hard part.
So from your perspective, if you went on the upstream side, there would not be the possibility of doing one move and having the Grassy Hill line attached to a different pole and then get rid of that one in the Y.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, actually, that was something that was discussed at our first utility coordination meeting, sort of a one-and-done move. One of the issues is the aerial line in this situation would be so far upstream of the culvert that it would be outside of if I remember correctly, outside of the right-of-way. So you would need a permanent easement to avoid an aerial trespass. So I am not sure what the dynamics of requesting such from the property owner would be. But then it seemed that the utility companies had other technical reasons that, we're not the utility professional per se and not, clear on what's important to them. They start talking about line slack and splicing and their ability to do those different things, which made it such that to put sort of a one-and-done situation didn't seem to be something that they were interested in doing. But here again, that's an issue to move forward with and trying to come to some resolution. Maybe it becomes an option. I don't know. Yeah. But, at our meeting with them, it was not something they were interested in doing.
Okay.
I think part of it is, Tim, that they want to be able to access the line, and if they have a truck in the road, but the line is 50 feet off the road, they have a limitation, I guess, onto how close the bucket can get off the road, and they certainly can't drive the truck, onto, in the middle of the night or a rainstorm onto grass like that.
Or a stream bed.
Yeah, or a stream bed. Right.
Very good. Okay, well, we thank you very much, sir.
All right, well, thank you. If you have any other questions, please reach out.
We shall. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All participants have been muted.
Okay, so that was a good bit of information. I guess we can mull it over. I think probably the Board of Selectmen needs to ultimately come up with a recommendation to either proceed knowing the new set of numbers in light of what we've heard, or to abandon ship. If we decided not to proceed with the bridge at all, we could check with legal and see what the ramifications there would be, but I'm sure there are a lot of bridges in town that are similar, and so I would think that would be hopefully not be a major thing, but if that could trump it, who knows. But if otherwise, we would be looking at having to, we have paid the engineering bill so far, so that would be not reimbursable, but you'd overlay that with the cost of the incremental costs that we would have to put up the extra 50% on a bigger number. So we can maybe discuss this at the next meeting and do some thinking about it.
Did we budget anything with this past budget?
Yeah, but it's all been focused on that lower amount. So we would have a couple of years to perhaps accumulate more funds for the 50% share of the construction and the engineering and everything. But there would still, it would be a consequence in the next 2 budget years for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely, but it's only going to get more expensive.
Yes. I guess it would be if that bridge stayed the way it is, and it, just like a number of other bridges I bet we can think of that are quirky little bridges, you stay with it, or you go and try to accumulate the funds to be able to replace it. So unfortunately it was, it's such a sizable increase that's going to be a tough one.
I hope that we don't have any other bridges like this. I know a few years ago there was an effort as part of, I think, flood mitigation to have our bridges, have engineers look at them. So I hope that through that process, this was the one that needed to be repaired. And that's why we applied for the grant when it became available. I think we've seen this on lots of projects where the conceptual design doesn't really match reality. The conceptual grant allows us to apply for a grant, and now this is the second time we'll be asking for an increase. So it's encouraging to me that the state recognizes that towns, municipalities need support in keeping their bridges up to date. And I agree with Chris, it's not going to get any cheaper. I'm very concerned that we've had repeated accidents there. That I did not know until tonight. That really concerns me.
Well, I don't know. I guess people have rubbed it. I don't know that there have been accidents in a way of responding with police and fire trucks and so forth. I think what we noticed was on the leading edge of the wall there was scraping, so something we could perhaps try to get police reports as to how many accidents that needed a tow truck or something versus somebody just scraping it, so.
Well, at a certain point, MACNIC will have to come back and fix the damage if this happens repeatedly, and I don't know if we want to be doing that with our tax dollars either. So I think what I would like to see is a revised budget. I've seen the increase, the cost for the increase, but what would really help me, if you're asking for our input, is a real budget on where we're at and what the bottom line is, because right now the bottom line isn't on this paperwork. At least I can't see it. But it's over $1 million, right?
I thought it was at 963.
But that's the construction budget, right?
Oh, that doesn't include the engineering.
Well, I got to find my sheet, but there was.
Well, maybe for next meeting, like.
Yeah, we'll try to lay out.
Say we can get all our figures and see what's going on and how much we have.
Okay,
in the
so
budget already.
the thing that the time extension request, it went from, which included engineering, rights-of-way estimates, contingencies. It went from $691,676 to $1,226,639. That's about a 77% increase. The construction itself went from 490.5, let's call it, to 963.2, which is about a 96% increase.
So what was the total cost estimate right now?
1.226639. So the town share goes from 345.8 to 613.3. So that's a $267,000 increase. We'd have to look and see what we have squirreled away already.
Right.
But it's similar to Mile Creek, where it went from 800 and something to $1.2 million. So, unfortunately, these sizable increases will take a lot of budget money to make that work.
Well, as we knew from our audit, we have a 22% in our unfunded balance percentage-wise. So we are a healthy town. It's just
we're healthy.
Some of these improvements. I just can't imagine that this situation is going to get any better by ignoring it.
All right. Well, let's do a little work on this between now and our next meeting, and we'll probably have to come to grips with it. And it's high time because we are starting the budget season. So if there's to be, if this has got to be accommodated, we might not have to spend a tremendous amount this next fiscal year, while we're waiting for the Corps of Engineer. But after that, depending on what we have accumulated, I think there are, I don't think I've got what's been accumulated so far.
Okay, so for next meeting, we figure out how much we've accumulated and how much we also have already set aside. Because we can almost budget this over the next 2 years, if they're not going to start until 22.
Well, this sheet that Nicole did indicated to meet the estimate, which was 719, it would be 592,000 in the 21 budget year. So I think that, but I think part of that was the grant proceeds. So, we can probably calculate what we'd have to come up with over a couple of years even to see with these new figures, and hopefully they wouldn't move any more than they have. Till you open the bid, you just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's also 2 years out.
Yeah. You'd think in this climate, the contractors would be pretty hungry, and
Not just the contractors, the cost of materials. Material costs are skyrocketing.
yeah.
So, I mean, I don't see it getting any cheaper. So, if you can get those figures for us next time.
Yeah. Okay. Next item is to review the minutes of the 7th of December. May we have a motion to consider them?
I'll make a point.
Second?
Okay. Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Yeah, I have a few corrections I'd like to request. On page 4, under other business, this is in the second paragraph with regards to the letter you shared with us last time that you had drafted supporting the Mark Deeple's project, Hatchett's, I guess off of Hatchett's Road. And you had asked for our feedback, and we gave you, there was discussion. We basically said that, I recall saying that it was setting a precedent and to check with the lawyer, but we didn't really come to a decision that you shouldn't endorse the project. And the last sentence is misleading. It says, after further discussion, the selectmen concluded it would be best if First Selectman Griswold did not endorse the project in writing. We didn't have that decision. So.
All right. So, which sentence are you going to change?
The last sentence is
okay.
Inaccurate. I believe what we left it is, after further discussion, you were going to consider our feedback and talk with the town attorney. That's how I recall that end of that discussion.
Okay.
Because that is not what we decided. It was written.
Well, the last sentence says that Diebold asked for a letter. It didn't say we would do it.
The second paragraph, sorry. The last sentence of the second paragraph.
Oh. Okay. Anything else?
Yes. The next paragraph following that concerns Harbor Management Commission discussion. I would just like to add a sentence at the end of that Selectman Nozel noted that the Harbor Management Commission had already discussed this issue at their November 14th, 2020 meeting.
Could you say that again, please?
Sure. Selectman Nozel noted that the Harbor Management Commission had already discussed this issue at their November 14th, 2020 meeting.
Okay.
And then in the next paragraph, I'd like to add a sentence. This is regarding the water issue on Library Lane, in which Metcalf had visited the property to assess the situation. I would just like to add that Selectman Nozel asked if there would be a report from Tom Metcalf to review.
Well, there is no report per se. He has inspected us, but he's not writing a report at this point. Because we need to find out what the pipe is.
Well, I asked if there was one. I'd like to know in a minute. That we had an engineer out there, and I think one would wonder if we're going to pay his bill what his results were on that inspection.
Yeah, well, I think we will await the owner's discussion, tell us what the pipe is for, because that's a critical piece. I I think if that has nothing to do with water, then he'll have, until we really know what that pipe does, because it seems, without going down and measuring and so forth, it seems like that exits the foundation in close proximity to where the water's showing up. So I don't know if there's a link or not. And if there isn't a link, we can ask him to summarize. I think once we know what the pipe is, he can summarize what he feels, but it may be that the owner will have to more clearly identify why water's coming from their property to the street, as opposed to saying, well, it's coming from the town road somewhere. And we can ask him to comment on that, because it doesn't look like there's any evidence of water coming across to Elm Street in a major way. And what was coming down Library Lane, there was evidence water was flowing on the school side of Library Lane, but not much that you could say is water coming on their side of Library Lane. I suppose if it's coming down Elm, I haven't been out there in a big rainstorm to see what happens, but you're not seeing the ground disturbed on their side as you see it on the other side, where you can see that the grass is disturbed and it's gone down to gravel, the flow of the water. So
Metcalf's still got to put something in a report that
yeah,
you can turn us in.
I think ultimately when we learn what the pipe is, then he would be in a better position to comment. If the pipe is, say, for an electrical wire or something of that sort, then that would make it different. And it may be that there'll have to be some specific excavation on the property to see why there is a definite flow of water from the ground at that spot. Because why would that be?
But Tom's still going to submit a report of his findings, is what Mary Jo is asking.
I still maintain there's no sense him writing a report till he gets clarity on what the pipe is.
Okay.
Okay, I just would like that noted, that I asked for that
All
during
right.
that discussion, and we'll go from there.
Okay?
Thank you.
So we have a motion. We could vote the changes as you mentioned them.
Aye.
I guess so we want to vote the minutes as amended.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Getting back to, we are at our last meeting, on Mr. Kelsey, I did speak with the chair, and I believe she had a conversation with Dave, and I get the impression she is in favor of it, and so I think that motion that we made last time should be sufficient unless anybody thinks differently.
So what you're saying is that the chair of the Halls Road Improvement Committee, you spoke with her, and she is in favor of having David Kelsey join their committee?
Yeah. That's my impression after speaking with her.
Okay.
And I think we want to make it clear that we don't necessarily need the endorsement of the committee chairs necessarily. You know, we certainly want the chair and the person to be known and, have attended a meeting and that sort of thing. But I don't think we want to have it that we can't make an appointment unless the committee chair does, because we may at times feel differently that a person should go on a given committee or a board commission, notwithstanding what the chair thinks. So I think we want their input. Normally, the chair is in agreement, and that's all to the good. But I just think we don't want to make it a requirement, an equal sign. So I guess we're all set on that.
Yeah.
Okay, the COVID. As of the moment, the most recent information, which is the 17th, from DPH, it's 128. The reporting is still, I think, very awkward for us because I don't believe the health has each town's information available with a daily, or even when a change occurs. So I believe if you don't look for, say, 3 or 4 days, it may be difficult to find out what happened in the intervening time frame. So this was the information that I had when I did this agenda, but obviously over the period, there are another 10.
This was accurate on Thursday. This was accurate last Thursday, because I checked. You had it right.
Do they have a daily record back all the way?
Anybody can go online and to the state website and go to their data tracking, and you can see what the daily rate is. Monday picks up the weekend, but it's pretty good.
But is there, would we find something like this
Yeah.
for our town?
Yes. We're town 105. You can go back, go by the dates.
Okay, because I got the impression from Michelle that
Well, you and
they
I
don't.
met on this with Michelle and Dave, and I went through that with you, showed you how to go back and look at the dates. So it's pretty good.
Okay. Because then what I got from Dave Roberge was like an increase of 12, but that must have been for a longer period of time, not just one change from one day to the next.
Okay.
So it's impossible. Well, maybe if we can find out what you're talking about, if there is something like this that would have, anytime there's a change, we would get a date and a new number.
It's on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be.
And actually, Limeline's done a good job of presenting that almost every day. You can just.
Yeah, well, I'd like to get it from Department of Health because, I know that Olwen and I were pulling our hair out trying to reconcile the stuff, and I've sort of given up trying to do the date and the gender and all that.
Well, if that's what you're asking for, you're not going to see.
No, not that necessarily, but I thought that when we would get ultimately things from Ledge Light, gender, date, we could then match it up, just because that detail, people are interested in that.
Well, what you're going to get now that I think in October is when Ledge Light switched over to following the Department of Public Health statistics, because they have other things they have to work on with COVID, obviously. But if you go on to the Department of Health website and you spend some time on it, it will give you a lot of information. And that includes, it breaks out the gender, breaks out the age groups. So if that's not at a daily rate, but you can see the bar by bar graph what where the major increases are occurring in what age group and the gender. It's all there. But at this point, I mean, the takeaway is that the community spread is significant. We're in the red. We've been in the red since October. Lyme is in the red. And now the focus should be on mitigating the spread. When we moved from Ledge Light data to Department of Public Health, there was an increase there.
Yeah, a big one.
But that's going to be, if you want to find out that information, I think we're going to have to work on that some other time, because the point of this whole exercise is that over the 2-week period that the DPH looks at that, the percentage of positivity in our towns is significant. And what are we doing to mitigate that, or what are we advising our residents to reduce the spread should be our focus.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the other thing is the protocol for the staff. I know we worked on something that was toward the end of November, but I think there was a bunch of edits and so forth, so maybe we need to get together again and see if, because has this moved forward since you were involved?
I haven't heard from anybody.
Yeah, because I don't believe we have a policy and procedure thing that we can distribute, and I think maybe we could meet and try to see if this is too long or whether, get it in final form, because this is still sort of work in progress. So maybe when we have a quiet moment, we can finish this up.
That was great. And I was just wondering, because I didn't see it on the agenda, did you want to talk about the grant here, or do you want to do that under new business or other business? The legislate COVID.
That's later.
Okay.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we'll do that under other business, because that didn't make the sheet before we got some materials on that.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Soundview sidewalks. Just so you know, I did send that agreement for the grant share of the construction work back to DSC, signed off.
Of course. Thank you.
So, and then at least that's out of the way. So, okay.
That's great.
Do you have anything to?
I really, since we met, we haven't had another meeting. At our last meeting, we talked about asking for a letter to be drafted by the town attorney. We have 2 properties that haven't given us temporary rights agreements. So basically a letter saying, we've reached out to you and we're asking you again to sign this so that we can make these improvements on your property. And I'm still waiting for a letter from the attorney to share with the committee. Our next regular meeting is until January 14th. But the hope was that we would get all the bid documents done this month and file our design work with the DOT. But the bid documents are under review till Wednesday by the committee. And then we're still waiting to hear on the easement update from the town attorney. So I haven't heard that either. And we aren't going to submit till the easement is done and signed. So a few little loose.
So we're lacking 2?
We're lacking 2. Number 29 and number 19, which is number 19, Hartford is a trust situation.
Yeah.
So
okay.
But their property is more in the flats area of Hartford Avenue. So the one of concern is 29.
Well, I think I did speak with the attorney on another matter, and I mentioned that there's a state statute that indicates that the town, I don't know whether it's could or should or must, but if we can do the work and minimize any impact to the property except for what we're doing, that might be something that I don't think we know the answer to that.
Right.
And if the answer is yes, we must do it, that would be helpful to know. So when's our next meeting?
Not till January is our next regular meeting.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll see if he could put out something about the answer to that question, because that would
Yeah,
dictate that situation. Because at the same time, he said if you did nothing and there was an unsatisfactory drop-off type situation, that might complicate things in another way. So we need to know which way we have to go.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're keeping attorneys very busy.
Okay. Haynes Park, that work is progressing, I hear, from our facilities manager, in a good shape, so that should be likely the first week in January, which now is a couple of weeks. But the building is coming along very nicely, and so I don't think there are any obstacles. I think there's probably a requisition for money that's in the works, but I haven't seen it yet. So, Grassy Hill, we had a discussion on that, so we'll pick that up at our next meeting, and maybe in between we can try to answer or get answers to any questions that might surface. But I think it's going to be incumbent upon the board to make a recommendation. Ferry Road, I think the engineer is doing a little bit of work on that. I need to speak with the tree commission as well as the tree warden, because I think we need to have the commission and the tree warden examine the trees along the path of the sidewalk and come up with some recommendations. If a tree is in really very poor shape, it might make the best sense to remove the tree and possibly plant something else nearby. But unfortunately, in the old days, they put big trees under electric wires, and they put trees where the sidewalks are, and they just don't mix well. If there is a possible way to leave the tree and deviate around it, maybe if that required going on a homeowner's property for the life of the tree, it might be worth doing. We did that up on Lime Street here. So, but I think if it looks like a lot of trees are in jeopardy, we would need a big discussion on that, because I remember when we did Lime Street, we had a middle school auditorium filled with people about that question, so we want to be very sensitive to what happens with the trees. The next is the town of Maheg. There's a new chairman of the Harbor Management Commission, John McDonald, and he was obviously present for the meeting that the commission had, I don't know, a week or two ago. And so I think the commission will be considering this matter at their next meeting. And so I had a conversation with the new chairman and just indicated that we need to come up with a plan here, or the commission needs to make a recommendation. Their jurisdiction is more at the water, so as far as the property is concerned, that'll undoubtedly be a board of selectmen thing. I think we need to understand how that survey lot line works in the vicinity of the ice house, if you know where that is, to know more precisely in that flat area, the water side of the ice house, what has been the history of cars parking there when Diana Johnston owned the property, and just understand the lot line, so you'd know what we're dealing with in a way of space.
Well, do we have a survey of that? There's got to be a survey or something.
Well, I know the property owners said they had a survey But it would probably be on file with the town clerk.
Yeah, I mean, it should be pretty cut and dry. If it's on their property or our property. If it's on our property, he's got to
Well, you know where the ice house is?
Yeah.
So between that and the water, they own some of that property. I'm not just sure how far down. So then, as far as the grassy area, before you get to the narrow trail that goes to the water, you know, how wide is that? How deep is it? Because I think in the harbor management plan it talks about a parking space. Now, I don't know that that is the definitive answer. There's only one space, or where historically have people been able to park more than one car. I think there was conversation about if more cars showed up than were at parking spaces, they could park up inside the gate, probably as you come in the gate on the left, because that's still the town area there, I believe. So, but obviously, if you have a rooftop kayak, you'd probably want to take it down, offload it, and then come back and park perhaps. And all this has to be supervised as well, so we want to make sure that how it's going to work. But I'd like to know what has been what's been the posture in the past. Has it been one car, two cars, three cars in the area of that ice house? I think part of the problem has been that the house was vacant for more than a couple of years, so people...
Well, honestly, I don't believe that, goes into effect of what's going on here. I mean, what's going on here is this guy is encroaching, this person, whoever, on town property. And he put some rocks on town property that aren't supposed to be there.
And
That's right.
trees, rocks, trees, and the sign
So,
spot.
first of all, I
Yeah.
mean, we can handle the car issue later, but right now, I believe he's got to get
Well, that was...
all the stuff out of town property.
As I understood it, I thought that the agreement with Steve, and I'm not sure whether John was part of that, was to remove the rocks on town property immediately, or as soon as possible. Huh?
It's not our job to remove them.
No, that the owner would remove them.
Okay.
Now, if they have not been removed, then that would not be satisfactory, and we could have Public Works go up and do it, but that's going to be time and money. So he should be able to move those rocks. Should have been done by now, if it hasn't been done. And I think he agreed to do that. If that's not been done, then we'll have to address that.
Well, I think we should send him a letter or something, or have an attorney send someone and say, you must remove your rocks and other landscaping off town property by
Right.
X amount of time.
But I think going forward, we need to have, I think it would be helpful to have harbor management comment as to the parking in that location. What's been the precedent in the past for cars parking there? Because that, if it's town property, we probably can park as we see fit within reason. And so I don't know myself how many cars have parked there. So Gary, will...
Gary Gregory, Browns Lane.
Yeah.
I've seen 3 cars there before.
How many?
3.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if they were on Diana's property at that time or not. But the Harbor Commission's responsibility ends at the high water line, as I understand it. So it goes from there, the parking lot and everything, the stones, everything, that's the Board of Selectmen's problem.
Right. Well, inasmuch as they more or less supervise all the landings, we thought they would be the one to make a recommendation. We could, if they don't do that, then we would need to do it. But I think it would be helpful to understand what's happened in the past, and because I think we would need to know where the boundary lines are so that we don't want to intrude onto their property, the owner's property. But if we have like a 15-foot swath, let's say, of relatively flat ground and so forth, and in the past there's been 2-3 cars parked there, then that would be important to know.
I thought the meeting was a little strange, the Harbor Management Commission. I mean, I was under the impression from our meeting the night before that they were going to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
By attending the meeting, I was surprised to see that you yourself presented. So you as a member of the Board of Selectmen actually were involved in this meeting. So I was surprised by that, number one. Number two, I think the feeling of the people that attended was very clear that the recommendation from those that were in attendance, including the members of the commission, were to make the town landing the way it was before the encroachments were put on there. And then if there's some kind of discussion that wants to take place with the landowner, at that point, fine. But right now, the concern is to get the encroachments out of there. I thought that was very clear. I thought the owner of the property clearly understood that. He said at least twice when I was there, if that's the recommendation of this board, I'll do it. Then Steve Ross tabled the conversation. There was not a recommendation, so I and most of the room left because the conversation was tabled. Found out later then that the conversation came back up, so it was not tabled. So that was a surprise also. So I don't know what would happen in the after I left, but it's a shame that the meeting, the people that wanted to hear, wanted to participate, many of us had left. But at the part of the meeting I attended, there was not a decision made by the Harbor Management Commission. The decision was to table the conversation. So I was confused when I left as to what the recommendation was going to be. But it was very clear from the people that spoke at the meeting that they wanted the town landing returned to its proper situation.
Yeah, and I think we need to understand where the lines are, what is from a practical standpoint, it's not a very wide piece of property, I gather. So if you pull in, you have to be able to back out and leave. So you have to probably have head-in parking. And what's been the practice? 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars? That would be very helpful to know.
Well, I think the car issue is second.
Well, the boulders, yeah. I mean, he agreed to move the boulders. If he hasn't moved the boulders, then we need to step it up and say they need to be done, or we'll have to move them and bill you back. But I think the important thing is that we need to have a decision on a part of the town as to the way it's going to be. And I think I remember very clearly, probably 12 years ago, there was discussion about inaccessibility to the landing because of brush and other impediments. And so it's a very sensitive topic with people. And of course, I think it's a wider range of people are more aware of it and so forth at this time. So we need signage, we need to have what the maximum number of cars can be, where they should be parked, and so forth. And so, I think they did table it. I don't know that they came to any agreement afterward once the meeting had been adjourned. I don't think so. And so Mr. McDonald will be carrying on here, but we want to make sure those rocks are out of the way at this time. But I think we also need to be have a conversation with the owners, just so that we don't have any misunderstanding. And if we deem that 1, 2, 3 cars is a satisfactory number, then if more cars show up, then we have to have signage that indicates there's a maximum number of cars, probably by having some sort of boundary around the parking areas so that people don't just park willy-nilly. And hopefully we wouldn't find it where people would just sort of park along the road somewhere and hope for the best, because that's going to become a supervision and a policing deal and everything else. So if we can come up with what we think is the best plan, we can inform the landowner, and then if they do have a crowd that shows up for some reason, then I guess they'll have to ask the constabulary to come and help out, because it really is off the beaten track.
I think Terry Lewis was very clear at the meeting that she knows the property, that the markers are very apparent. So I think that issue, she said the markers are there, she's walked it, she even showed.
Well, the markers back? I thought the markers went missing too.
No, that was a sign on the front post.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was taken off.
Yeah.
Has that been returned?
Nope.
I don't know.
That was,
So not really taken, stolen from the town.
Okay.
it's
Well,
missing.
we don't know if it's who may have it, whether it might show up or not, but hopefully.
We'd like our sign back.
We'd like our sign back. It was a sign that Diana had made herself for the town, so I'd like that back too. It was very attractive. But I think, as Chris suggested, a letter needs to be written ASAP that says the rocks need to get out of there, the trees need to get out of there, the sign needs to be returned.
Well, we don't know if they have the sign.
Well,
We don't know who has the sign, right?
All right. Well, the sign they put up replaced our sign, so some discussion of the sign is probably a good.
There was a gentleman at the meeting last time who stood up after I said the sign was removed. And the owner of the property said he didn't know anything about it. I looked at him, he said, I don't know anything about that. And a fellow back there jumped up and said, that town sign disappeared the same day you put up the private property sign and put the boulders in there. So you could draw your own conclusions.
Well,
So can we write a letter? Can we have a letter?
If somebody puts a bunch of boulders on your property, are you going to sit there just like that?
yeah.
I'm coming down to see you. I'm going to park my car in your property.
I think, though, that we want to keep it friendly as much as possible, and so I think we can inquire about the sign. I don't think we could say, we know you have it, type of thing.
Nobody said that. We just said,
Well,
So we can have a letter written that we want.
yeah, I think if the rocks are still there, I can give them a call and say, as I understand it, the conclusion at the meeting of the harbor management was you would move the rocks.
And I think there's some vegetation that they planted too. According to what was handed out at the meeting, there was pictures that showed at least one tree has been planted that's on town property. So any vegetation that is on town property.
Across the street, across that little road, the driveway.
well, I think a letter would be better in a deadline and maybe registered. And this way, it goes on
Well,
record.
maybe I'll take a run down there and see if the rocks are still in
would
place.
you want me to do that for you in the morning?
Sure.
I could take pictures of what's there for you, send them.
Well, you can just say the rocks are still
Okay.
right straight through, and then we can send a formal demand. And if it isn't met by a certain time, we'll have our public works people do it, and we will have to charge accordingly.
To me, that was a dastardly act that guy did. I cannot get over that. That's the same thing as like in 1800 steal my horse.
Yeah.
Stealing the property from every citizen in this town. We should be very, very angry about that.
Well, it seemed as if he was going to do it. So if he hasn't done it, that's very bad faith.
It wouldn't be too much trouble to get a few hundred kayakers walking around here.
All right. Well,
Okay?
let's not exaggerate here. So.
I don't think that's exaggerating at all.
Well, all right. This is not. We don't want to get into a back and forth, Gary. So we're.
That's a town property and it belongs to the town citizens.
Right. Okay. New business. There is a executive order 9R as in Romeo, and the executive order essentially says that the towns and cities must offer property tax relief under the same auspices as was done in July. We opted for the low interest program as opposed to the tax deferral. And so if the town wanted to stay with the same program, no action is required. If we change the program, then the town must notify OPM by the 30th of December that there will be a different plan. I would favor personally the same plan. I spoke with a town attorney, and because one concern I had was that notification, or talking about how the plan would be, about the plan, just to let the public know. Before we were mailing tax bills, so it was rather simple to put a little insert. At this point, everybody has their tax bills, and so it would be a pretty substantial expense to mail everyone a notification. I think the use of the program was de minimis, and we also have the supplemental vehicle bills that are coming out, so they would be in the mix as well. So, subject to confirmation, there does not seem to be a requirement to send direct communication to the taxpayers about this relief program. We would put it on the web, or I could put it in the weekly update column that I make, and generally put it out through the media that the town is going to do whatever we decide. And that would be that. So if we stick with what we have, no action is required, we would do our best to put out whatever we decide on the web and not undertake the expense of creating a piece and mailing it out. So that's about it. I think that the 3% worked well last time, and since we have to have one or the other, or both, I think we need a consensus as to what the board wants to do. But
I'm in favor of maintaining the low interest rate program.
the 3?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, why don't we, even though it's probably not necessary, why don't we just have a motion to, for the, under the executive order 9R, that we will stay with what we did before, which will require no notification to OPM, and stay with the same program.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Last is, I've been working on copying machines. We have 2 machines on the second floor near the land use area that their lease has ended, and they are approximately 5 years of age, and they still work. And generally what you do is you either hold them, and you can still get service contracts, but usually by year 7, things start, it's hard to get parts as those machines get older. And so that is a problem. So beyond that, we started looking at some other machines in other departments that are copiers, more just copiers and not these fancier things. And in addition to three of these machines are owned by the town because they come off of lease. And they are probably 10 years or more old. So we're on borrowed time. If some major problem occurred with one of the machines, it might not be serviceable. Some of these companies maintain machines in their warehouse so that if something breaks, you don't get a new part, but they might take a part out of another machine. But again, you're talking about machines that with very little value. And the other thing that the salesperson pointed out is that with older copiers, because they're sometimes, some are self-standing, they're not connected to the network, but those that are connected to the network could pose a threat for hacking and so forth. And that's beyond my pay grade as to how that all might work. But apparently an old machine that is connected to the network is a potential hazard. So we're exploring upgrading some of the equipment. It started with the 2 machines, but then there was talk about maybe upgrading some of these old things that have very little value and might be upgraded for relatively small cost. So I don't really have a proposal at this point, but in as much as we're approaching budget time and so forth, if we were to do something within this fiscal year, if we do a lease, the lease might be a similar expense as what we have, might not require any change. If we do more stuff, it might require Board of Finance approval and so forth. So it's gotten to be a bigger research project than it started out to be, but we'll try to get a couple of comparisons and make a presentation, make a recommendation, but I'll share that with you all as time goes along. So, let's see. I guess at this time we can do public comment, and then we'll go to what you were talking about, that the coronavirus relief fund, is that? Yeah, that'll be under the other. So at this point we will unmute people, and then we can proceed with public comment. So I'll go 9-9. Good afternoon. Is there anyone who wishes to bring up an item of public comment? Any public comment from the phone crowd? All right. Anybody in the audience here? Okay. We'll move to the other business. We just got a communication from Office of Policy and Management about the Coronavirus Relief Fund, known as CRF. And I don't know if that also means CARES Act, because in reading the paper, it says that as of June 30th, a total of approximately $14.5 million from the Municipal Coronavirus Relief Fund program, that's what was used and dispersed. It was structured to provide funds on a reimbursement basis after processing of FEMA claims. So I think they inferred that the use up through June 30th was not that much, as much as they expected. So what they decided to do was to devote $45.5 million immediately. That would be cut to support municipalities' costs for the period July 1 through December 30th. So as I gather, there was a total of $75 million in this coronavirus, which I think is the same as CARES Act.
Yes.
And so $14.5 million was used for claims through June 30th. They're holding another $15 million for municipal teachers and staff, and that leaves $45.5 million to be dispersed to the towns and cities. The way the funds are being allocated, 33% of the equation is population density, which I'm not sure how you calculate that. 33% is population / adjusted equalized net grand list per capita, and 34% is based on population. So it all sounds very puzzling to me, all this population stuff. So attached to the report, each town has what it will receive out of the $45 million. And in our case, there are two columns. One is what the population formula, and the other is total municipal amount, which would be the claims through June 30th plus this formula amount. In the case of Old Lyme, it's $42,577. $42,577. I'm not sure when this disbursement is to occur, but I gather the way they said immediate. OPM will be immediately providing a direct $45.5 million allocation. So I don't know if that'd be before the end of the year or what. So I haven't really been able to get all the particulars on this other than what this paper states. So I think we submitted a request for funding through through FEMA, and there was a preliminary decision on an amount. It had one more approval step to go, and then we would, I think the 75% share we would get is something like $89,000, something like that. Then that would be for the quarter ending, June 30th. Then July through September, that FEMA submission hasn't been made yet, and then from October through the end of the year, which is what this whole thing covers, that'll be yet another submission, I expect. So the FEMA funds are supposed to be 75% of eligible costs that the town calculates. So this would be the tantamount to the 25% share that under the CARES Act. We thought that's how it would work. So it's going to be a one-shot deal, and I think that takes it up through December 30th, 2020. So and I don't know that there's anything that would happen in the in 2021 for this relief fund.
So do you need a motion to accept the grant?
I haven't been asked about that. I don't know that there's any, I didn't see anything. Let me see, disbursement, let me read here. Okay, so it says to streamline the process, municipalities need to access the OPM portal and complete a simple certification process. Municipalities through their COVID portal contact will complete a web-based reimbursement and certification process. Instructions will be sent separately. This has to happen by Friday, December the 18th. So, I'll have to check and make sure because that was this past Friday.
And Nicole has done that. Nicole has done that. I checked.
So did that call for a, did she say we should do a motion?
I asked it, yes, because typically we do, so I asked her if we should do a motion. And even Andy said yes, we should.
Well, I guess it wouldn't hurt. If we don't need it, we don't need it. If we do.
Well, typically when we get monies from the state or the.
I make a motion. We go for it.
$42,557.
Yeah.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Accept. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now, as an element to this, Ledge Light Health District sent out a communication last week that requested that the member municipalities earmark 10% of their grant to Ledge Light to help them cope with the much larger expenses that they have incurred. Obviously, 10% would be $4,256. I think probably we would need to have the Board of Finance weigh in on this because the grant has to come to the town and then the town would have to decide to earmark 10% of it for Ledge Light. So I think that's a finance board's jurisdiction, and if there's a time element, we could probably ask them to have a special meeting about it.
Can we make a recommendation
Yeah.
to them? Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I recommend that we approve the 10% allocation of the CARES grant to the Board of Finance for approval.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Other discussion on the 10%? I'll just mention that our representative to Ledge Light, Thomas Katauka, recommended that we do this. I've seen traffic on the web from a number of towns in the Ledge Light district that the first selectmen were in favor of it. So I think subject to the Board of Finance, that would be a very, very good thing for Ledge Light. So, okay, that we can vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Have we other business?
Yeah. There was an email from Nicole, our finance director, suggesting that there may be some Osha requirements that we need to make sure that we're following that are COVID related. So I just wanted to make that maybe part of this review process for our documentation for COVID, that we make sure that we comply with any OSHA checklist templates.
Okay.
I just printed this off the OSHA website, but some of the things under COVID, they know we should make sure we address. When I went to look, I quickly looked to see what were some of the findings that towns that had been audited by OSHA.
This was attached to her email?
No, I just printed that out.
Oh.
A lot of the fines were directed towards inappropriate wearing of N95 masks and things. So of course, we have an order from the governor allowing us to use the N95s without the measurement, all that stuff. But I think the point is that it has to be documented. So we may need to reference in some of our documents that everything, and I believe there's a spot in there that complies with the governor's orders, but we may need to check some of the OSHA requirements to make sure they're referenced in our documentation going forward, so that if we are audited, we made that statement in the documentation. Rogers Lake Dam. Apparently, there is a document that the authority has worked really hard on to sort of a SOP, and they call it the Dam Operation and Maintenance Manual. It works obviously from their years of experience in managing the dam. And for a while, I think the authority themselves were sort of opening and closing the sluice gates. And then I think with Bonnie, I think maybe Public Works was managing it. So the concern for the authority was that this needs to be documented, and there needs to be a procedure manual for who's ever in charge of managing the dam to know who the players are and their years of experience on regulating the sluice. My understanding is because the dam is owned and maintained by the town, it is our responsibility to make sure that the dam is properly maintained.
The dam?
They have put this together, and I'm not sure, my understanding was it's in your office somewhere, and I don't know what exactly the Board of Selectmen has to do other than maybe read it, approve it.
Is this the EAP?
No.
Emergency Action Plan? Or?
No, that's another thing. That's another thing that has to be looked at, yeah. No, this is actually right from the authority put this together. So the board members, and it's just their SOP and operations of the sluice and the dam, which they've been doing. And if any of these people get off the authority or move, we will have lost that knowledge and that experience. So they felt it was important to document the actual protocol that they use when they maintain the sluice and the fish ladder, and it's really quite complicated. I mean, they follow the weather, they measure the expected rainfall, and they make their plans onto how to open the sluice or close the sluice. And then at certain times of the year, because of the fish, the alewives, they have to maintain that whole process so that the fish can do their thing. So it's excellent that they put this down so that it's not just coming to someone's mind. But I think it's important that the Board of Selectmen review this, ask any questions, maybe invite the authority to talk to us about it. and determine who's going to be responsible for these activities, if it's a public works function under, I don't know.
There was generally a person responsible to monitor the level of the lake, and if there was a big rain forecast, they would start lowering the lake and then turning the wheel. And Dick Smith did it. I think Edadante has a key because it's locked. Mm-hmm. So I think Dick Smith may still do it. I don't know 100%, but
I don't believe so. I think it's another. Maybe they would come and just give us a quick presentation about their findings.
I think it's a really good idea. It's have you seen it, Chris?
No.
No.
Pass it down. I think it's important, and I think that they've spent a lot of time on this, and they actually have the experience and knowledge, and it's to their credit that they took the time to document this.
And who are you dealing with on this, Mary Jo?
is it? Did Dennis do that, Overfield?
Dennis is one of the people that worked on it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dennis
And I don't
Overfield.
know, they're an authority, so they have their own authority outside the Board of Selectmen, but if the town is responsible for the dam, that's where the connection to the board is. So I really applaud the authority for taking the
Well,
time.
it said revised, so it seems like that's been in existence for a while. Because revised November.
That's the first time I've seen it. So.
Well, we could get Dennis to brief us at some point, because he's very thorough, and he's been the lead guy on the weeds and all the things in the lake there. So.
But I think the point is who's going to be responsible for this going forward.
Well, there's usually a primary person that is in charge of the wheel, the sluice gate, and that's vital to have somebody as local as possible, and then a backup. So if somebody's on vacation, likely could be Edadante at Public Works. Doesn't have to be. So we'll find out.
Okay, I appreciate that. We had a rash of apparently stolen vehicles. I think we all had an email from our resident state trooper suggesting that we consider a public service announcement. We
did put something out 2 weeks ago about that.
I think his question was, did we want to do something more out in the community, signage, like for example, what Essex does. Is there some suggestion that we could do a signage that would be real apparent to remind people to take their keys, lock their doors, don't leave valuables in their cars?
Yeah.
Essex, I know, has the 3-color signage promotion that a lot of towns have kind of borrowed from.
You could use the banner pole, maybe. Probably not getting much activity. Right now, not too many charities. I gotta wait.
So I wanted to bring that to your attention again, because I'm not sure if he's waiting for the Board of Selectmen to, support.
Who's waiting?
Matt, the resident state trooper.
Well, as I say, a couple weeks ago we sent something out, so we could explore a banner. There's a cost to a banner. You got to print it and then hang it. It's probably on the web too. I could ask Michelle if we have something on the web, because there has been a rash. And people are pretty blasé about leaving stuff in their cars, and you'd think they would pay heed.
Right, yeah. Well, I appreciated Matt bringing this to our attention and suggesting maybe something more visible to the community to remind people to be diligent. And I don't know, maybe Kerma has some suggestions too. I don't know.
Well, I think Essex had a rash of them, and it's, easy access off an interstate. You just make a quick jump and you're in and out fast.
Let's see. And then I guess the last thing I was going to ask you about is if either of you had had some time to consider the resolution, the information that I sent out, gave you last time too, on declaring racism as a public health concern or crisis, actually, or where you stand on that.
I didn't have an opportunity to read it yet. I'm sorry. I've just been busy.
Okay.
Also.
Anything else then?
Let's see. What's up with vacation time for some people? I guess I've been getting some phone calls. If you're anything.
What's up with what?
Vacation time. People are complaining about the vacation time.
It's pretty under control. When we came to the new fiscal year, people had a fair balance of unused vacation time. So the standard is you can carry 5 days of vacation into the next fiscal year, and so we were a little more lenient because of the COVID situation and so forth. And so we, as we were coming up on the 6-month interval, we said we want people to work that balance down, and some have done a good job, others still have balances, but I think, except for a couple of people, I think people are within the week carryover criteria, which would be, whether you're 40 hours, 30 hours, whatever the case is. So I think there are only 2 or 3 people that would be in excess of the week carryover situation at this point. So I don't think there's an issue for the moment. I think we have several employees who have been here a good long time, and as a result, they get a lot of vacation every year. So if they've been working down a balance of carryover, they haven't started on their fiscal 21 vacation. And so it's only 6 months away from the end of the fiscal year. So we want people to understand that we don't want to have this be a recurring thing. Every June 30th, we have people who haven't had an opportunity to use their vacation. There are a couple of people where that's probably a legitimate issue, but then most everyone else should be able to take their vacation within the period allotted. So I think we're in reasonable shape right now. I think it's going to be, we're going to try to let people know every month or two as we go through the next 6 months that here's where you stand. Now, it's on the pay stub, so they shouldn't be a surprise. But we don't want to face a situation where we have quite a few people who are saying, gosh, I didn't get around to taking my vacation, because the rule is that if you have over the 5 days, it's forfeited. And that's not a good situation, but it compounds itself, particularly with people who have a lot of new vacation. So we're trying to reinforce that, get them to use their vacation. And if they really don't care, that's their prerogative, but we just want them to, for mental health, it's a good idea to use your vacation.
So we cleared up everybody with the comp time issue back.
Yeah, the comp time, but there are still people who, like Michelle Noren, she has to do these evening meetings. Mm-hmm. She has to start all these meetings. Yep. So she'll generate hours getting them going, and if a chairman is not very good at running the meetings, she might have to stay longer than just to get it going. So, but probably there isn't a heck of a lot of comp time being generated. We've tried to get away from that, where, gee, I'll just stay an extra hour and put it on comp time and balance it. So the rule is, though, that if comp time exists when you take your vacation, if you have any comp time outstanding, that is used first. So if you have 4 weeks vacation and a couple of weeks of comp time, which I don't think, I think the new standard is 30 hours, so you shouldn't have more than 1 week of comp time. That would come off, and now you're back to the end of the year. You're going to use vacation, so it makes it tricky. But I just think we have to try to be as firm as possible about it. And if there are a couple of situations, we'll deal with them. But you want to be fair, and you want to be, I guess, somewhat strict, because otherwise people will just wait till the last minute. And you don't want to have in the fourth quarter of the year so much vacation going on that you have positions that aren't even around for a month or something. So it should be taken all year long, hopefully. So I think we're pretty good for the moment.
Okay. How about budget books? Did they go out yet?
No.
Okay.
They were due the sheets were due last week. So Nicole will be starting the books, but there'll be some, in January there'll be, and we have a couple things on our schedule to meet with the budget with Nicole, like we did last year. So hopefully put those on your calendar if you haven't. Okay?
You're going to talk about this?
What's that? Oh, yes. This handsome sign came in from Sustainable Connecticut.
Wow, it's gorgeous.
Isn't it? Yeah. And it has the bronze designation. See, Chris?
Very nice.
Maybe it's too far away from the camera. But it says Sustainable Connecticut, Local Action, Statewide Impact, and bronze. And they have 2 spaces. They do not have a gold category at the moment, but they will be having a gold category in the not too distant future. So I know the team is working on the silver one. That'll be the next challenge. But we congratulated the team before, but this came in the mail to us, and we'll find a suitable spot on the wall. It's heavy, so we'll have to make sure we do it properly, but this is very handsome.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Could I get a picture of?
Yeah.
I guess I got to get you in the same time.
Well,
can you get together for the
We
picture?
could.
I don't know how legal that is, but I'll just send it to the team.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good. All right. We're getting close to dinner time, so.
They're moving fast on the next one, too.
What? Yeah.
The next gold, whatever, not gold, but the next one they're moving fast.
Silver.
Yeah, they're moving on it.
Yeah.
Pollinators.
Good.
Everybody's going to have a pollinator garden.
Well, they're going to do it. Okay, if there's nothing else, we could call for a motion to adjourn at 6:16.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Say. Thank you. Have a wonderful Christmas.
You all.
Yeah.
You probably saw me up in the open space a couple of times.
Oh, okay. You're brown.